Hey everybody, can you believe 2024 is already halfway over? I am flabbergasted how fast this year is going. But what I love about this time of year is that I get to see everyone's top 10 reads of the year so far. So today I'm here to share with you my top 10 reads of the year so far and hope that every single one of them is on your TBR by the end of this video. So without further ado, let's get started. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. How are you doing today? As always, I hope you're happy, I hope you're healthy, I hope you're safe, and of course I hope you're reading an amazing book or two or three or four. I have to say that it's been hot in Northern California, and 90s, high 90s, low 100s, so the air conditioning's on. I want to apologize if you can hear the ambient noise of the air conditioner. There's no way it's going to be turned off for me because it is way too hot. And I know it's been a while since I put up a video. I have been reading and working and reading and working, but I am here to share with you 10 books that I know you are going to want to read before I'm done. So without further ado, let's get started. Get out your pen, your paper, your Goodreads, however you keep track of your TBR. If you are so able, please get these books from your local independent bookstore, or if you are a library user, get your library to get you a copy as soon as possible. The first book I want to tell you about is Bear by Julia Phillips. This is out from Hogarth Books. Now, you may remember Julia Phillips from her debut novel, Disappearing Earth. I believe it was shortlisted for the National Book Award. And I actually liked Bear even better. This is a very simple story. It is the story of two sisters who live on this sort of remote island off of the coast of Washington. They've lived there for many, many years, almost their entire lives. They live with their mother, who is very ill, and they are taken care of, and sort of at the end of her life. She's like fighting the repercussions of some chemical she was exposed to due to her job. The girls have always sort of talked about this idea that once their mom passes on, they will leave this island and they will go out and they will start over in the new world. But what winds up happening is one day, out of nowhere, sort of unexpectedly, a bear appears on the island. And this is not something that happens often. And the event of this bear really changes the dynamic between these two sisters. The younger sister reacts in fear. The bear shows up one day on their porch and it seems very attracted to their home and their family, and she reacts in fear. She wants to get away. She sort of embodies this fear into her idea of wanting to flee the island. Now her sister, on the other hand, sort of embraces the bear as a sign, and she wants to almost befriend it and does some stuff, puts her life in sort of some risky positions just in order to create a relationship with this bear. And what the book does amazingly is sort of dissects this idea of the relationship between these sisters, how this event sort of creates the dichotomy of how they're going to react, but also how they view the world. One from more of like a position of the older one is always taking care of everything. She's ready to settle down. She's ready to sort of see things hopefully as a future. The younger one is looking for escape, doesn't want any relationships other than the one that she has with her sister, and the bear sort of becomes that sort of metaphor for her. I thought this book was beautifully written. The dynamic between the sisters is amazing, and I will say it is not always a happy book, but I really just thought it was a beautifully told tale of family and choices and the changing landscape of relationships based upon events that you may not have any control over. So that's Bear by Julia Phillips. That's out from Hogarth Books, and I hope you pick it up. The next book on my list is Come and Get It by Reid. I adored Reid's debut novel, Such a Fun Age. This is her sophomore book, out from Pantheon. And this book has really stuck with me. I read this back, I think, in February, and I thought about it a couple of times. It's a sort of a fun book to describe because there's a lot of humor to it, but as it's dissecting the world that we live in, the humor becomes very dark. But so we have, it's a campus novel with sort of two different perspectives. We have a woman who has been writing these sort of books that I want to say those pseudoscience, sociology type of books. She comes to teach at the university, and then starts to investigate sort of this group of women who, college students that live together, and sort of their sense of, what's the word I'm thinking of? Their sense of entitlement. Gosh, that's a long pause. I apologize. It was there. It was on the tip of my tongue. And she creates a relationship with our other main character, who is a woman who has been sort of fighting for the world that she lives in. She comes from a family that's had to put a lot of work into getting her into school. She winds up taking a year off, but she's the RA because that's how she pays for part of her school. And she has the room next door to this group of women that this professor is now studying, and the relationships become very tangled. This book dives into race, it dives into socioeconomic advantage and disadvantage, it dives into that sense of entitlement, or sort of like this idea of what are you willing to do to get what you want as well. There's really good humor in the book. I mean, Reid can tell a story. She can create a character. The pages turn. I will say I listened to this as an audiobook, and it's a fantastic. Both of her books are fantastic audiobooks. If you haven't read Such a Fun Age, highly recommend. But this is Come and Get It by Reid. If you like sort of that, I want to say it's like an elevated campus novel. And I just adored it, really loved it. Okay, so coming in at number 8 on my list is Hombrecito by Santiago Jose Sanchez, out from Riverhead Books. I really love this book. Gosh, I'm going to say that about every book on this list, and it was really hard to put them in any sort of order. You know how it is for me. I don't love to put things in order, but this one, I just want to talk about Hombrecito. It's a debut novel. It's the story of a young boy who is a member of a family. He has a mom, sort of a missing dad, a brother. They live in Colombia, and because of everything goes on, the mother decides to move them from Colombia to the United States. In doing so, she sort of upends this kid's life. And he comes to America trying to find himself. We find out very quickly that he is queer and trying to see what that identity is, and also dealing with the dynamics of his family. And there are touching moments between the fact that the mother, she sort of goes MIA at times and really disappears on the brothers, and they have to rely on each other. But when she comes back, you know that she's working really hard to figure out how to take care of her family. Our young man continues to grow up, becomes very sort of adventurous in the discovery of his sexuality, but you can tell because of the issues and relationships in his family, he struggles to make relationships with anyone he makes contact with, keeping it very physical and making some interesting decisions. At the end of the book, we find that they return to Colombia, he and his mother, him more or less to maybe reconnect with his father, who he has not seen much in many years. His mother's mother, his abuela, his grandmother, is ill. She's had a stroke, and he's really gone there also to say goodbye. And as he is there, all of the coming of age that is the book sort of comes to fruition. What is brilliant about this novel is this is very much the main character Santiago's story, but in parallel to this, it's his mother's story and how she's finding her place in the world and her way of finding love and commitment. And the last section of this book, told from her perspective, is, in my mind, it's like the chef's kiss to a very strong debut novel. So that's Hombrecito. That is by Santiago Jose Sanchez, and that is out from Riverhead Books. Next on my list, actually, you know what? I think I have quite a bit of queer representation. I've read a lot of really amazing queer books this year, so I want to say thank you to all the authors for that, and just sort of being seen in so many books that I read this year. Okay, so the next book that I want to tell you about is Exhibit by Kwon. This also is out from Riverhead. This book is, Kwon is one of those authors. She's had 2 books out. I've now read them, and I find that a lot of the times her books to me are books of ideas and books of beautiful prose. So if you're looking for like this plot where like all of this action happens, Exhibit's not going to be for you. But if you're looking for someone who's a master with language and ideas and people, then Kwon is your writer. This is the story of two women. One is a artist, a photographer, who is sort of trying to figure out what to do next in her art. She goes to a party with her husband. Their relationship is already a little bit awkward because they had agreed originally that they never wanted children, and now he has changed his mind, and that's sort of put different dynamics on the relationship. She goes to this party with him and she meets a ballet dancer, a woman who is on sort of, I'm going to call it a sabbatical due to injury. She is this beautiful woman that she just becomes infatuated with. This book deals with fetish. This book deals with the power dynamic of relationships. This book deals with sexual energy as a focus for artistic expression. And it does an amazing job of really articulating two very different relationships for our main character, the one with her husband and the one with this woman, and how you can have these relationships and need very different things from two different people in order to feel whole yourself. I thought it was beautifully written. I've said that a number of times. I think Kwon has a way of words like no other, and I think she is just like next level. And I love this book. So that's Exhibit out by Kwon, out from Riverhead. Highly, highly recommend it. Okay, next on my list is another queer novel, and that's In Tongues by Thomas Grattan, and this is out from MCD. In Tongues is the story of a young boy. At the very beginning of the book, we find out that he has broken up with his boyfriend, decided to pack up everything he has. He actually steals a little money from his boyfriend, gets on a bus and goes to New York City, goes to figure out what the world is going to have in store for him. We find out he has a very interesting relationship with his mother, and his father has left and sort of found religion. And at the center of this is a gay man's coming of age novel. This young boy comes to New York to figure himself out. He winds up getting a job, a number of jobs actually. He meets a woman who runs a bar, moves in with her and her girlfriend, and then he meets this very powerful gay couple that run this art gallery. And the book becomes a focus of how his coming of age, their relationships and the dynamics within it, the power dynamic between the two of them, all of that comes to fruition as they try to figure out how they all fit together. But what winds up happening is there are many more pieces in this young man's life than just this. And he even takes a moment to go back to the Midwest where his father is and sort of almost gets swept up in the church, but can't leave behind this really integral part of himself, his queer center. And that becomes something that can't be overcome in the relationship with his father. The book is very much about this young man developing himself and how he is going to interact with others. The pages just turn, and it's just an amazing dive into this one person's life as they figure out what's going on. The end of the book has real heart. I didn't see the end of the book coming, which I thought was really powerful. And I just loved it. I think that for me, I had never heard of Thomas Grattan. I know that his first book had some well-deserved praise, I'm sure. This book made me want to read everything that he's ever written. So that's In Tongues by Thomas Grattan, out from MCD. Okay. The next book, every year I have a book that I call my hug for the heart. Just a book that makes you feel good about yourself. And this is a book that was not on my radar, at all. I had heard nothing about it. I was in the bookstore and I just picked it up because I loved the cover. Then it had a blurb from Ann Patchett and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give this book a go. And that's how I wound up reading Sipsworth by Simon Van Boo. And this is out from Godine Press? I've never heard of them. Never heard of this book. And goodness gracious, this is one of those moments where just being in a bookstore, going down the shelves, changes your reading year entirely. And you all know, if you've been around on my channel, I have a soft spot for books about old women. And this is a story of an older woman who has moved back to the UK from Australia, where she was married and had a son. She has unfortunately lost both of them and returned back to the UK basically just to die. She has no sort of idea about what's next other than that. One night, she wakes up, she hears some noise outside in her trash can. She goes outside and she finds a fish tank, which she decides to bring into her house for very different reasons. And in it, she finds a mouse. And this book becomes the dynamic between this old woman and this mouse. Now, the mouse does not start talking. It's not that kind of book. But what the mouse does is it forces this woman to get out there in the world and make relationships. She makes relationships with the local librarian and her son. She goes to the hardware store and a relationship forms there with the owner of the hardware store. And there's just all of these moments of where she starts to find out that even though she's had so much loss, there are things to live forward to and to live for after all of that loss. And this mouse teaches her this lesson, and it is just absolutely adorable and so well put together. And I just loved it. I just loved it. The end is bittersweet, but it's just a lovely book about finding family after you thought there was nothing else to work towards. So that's Sipsworth. I need some help here, by Simon Van Booy, B-O-O-Y. And it is out from Godine Press, which I really have never ever heard of. And now I need to check them out because they probably have many more books that I would absolutely love. So there you go. Okay, we're into the top 5 now. That was books 10 through 6, so let's get going. This is the only book that is not out yet, and that's Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout, out from Random House. It comes out on August 13th, so it's not that far away. I am a huge Elizabeth Strout fan. I do not need to sell people on Elizabeth Strout. She is an amazing author. But this book is a little bit different because I feel like she's combined the two worlds that we love, right? So set in Maine, this book combines the world of Olive Kitteridge and the world of Lucy Barton. Our main character in this book is Bob Burgess, who we met in Lucy by the Sea. He is a retired attorney, sort of pseudo-retired attorney from New York, who's moved to Maine as well. And it's the story of him sort of finding his life. And sort of his direction. This book has a murder in it, and in the murder, he gets back into the world of defending the person who is accused of that murder. A man, I say young man, he seemed young to me, I know he's my age, but he lived with his mother, she goes disappearing, and of course everyone thinks he's done it. That is sort of like one part of a much bigger story. There are amazing moments between Lucy and Bob and sort of this friendship that just sort of keeps developing into this admiration and love for one another. We have Lucy meeting Olive and their relationship and sort of the dynamic between them, that she brought these two very live characters in my head from all of the other books together. Brilliant. So good. I always tell people who ask me about writers who say a lot without using many words, that is Elizabeth Strout to me. She can pull you in with a sentence that actually is very few words, but says so much. And I just think she is a brilliant writer. I loved this. This may be my favorite book of hers, because of the combination of all of the stories and the peoples and the town and all that. So that's Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout. It comes out on August 13th from Random House, and I adored it. Number 4 on my list is Martyr by Kaveh Akbar, out from Knopf. I actually read this book, this may be my first or second read of the year. I read it as an ARC, and then I went and saw him in person at Green Apple Books on the Park. Excuse me. Martyr it's a complicated story. So this is the story of Cyrus. His mom was in an airplane that was shot down over the Persian Gulf, and he and his father moved to the Midwest. His father becomes a chicken farmer, and he winds up going to college. He is dealing with his own sort of queer awakening. He is also dealing with an addiction issue. He has an addictive personality. He is a poet, and he is really just struggling to find the way. The book opens with this amazing section where he sort of makes this deal with God that if this light flickers, he will give up his drug addiction and he will find a purpose. What winds up happening is he starts to try to write this book about martyrs and this idea of where martyrs come from. And in the background is always the story of his mother. And there's so many different perspectives here. I just don't even. But my favorite part of this book is his friend tells him about this art exhibit of this woman who is in, I think, Boston, who is dying of breast cancer. And she's spending her last days in the exhibit having conversations with people. And he, in his idea and his sort of his development and his articulation of the idea of martyr, thinks that she's someone that he must interact with. And he goes there, and their relationship and their conversations they're like so philosophical, but they're also so I guess real is maybe the wrong word. There's so much love in all of this book in a lot of ways. He is struggling really to find a place for himself, and there's blurbs from his book throughout the rest of the novel where you sort of start to see his ideas take place. Martyr is a complicated story of a young man trying to figure out what life looks like by looking back, and what all of the pieces that he forgets or doesn't notice around him become the puzzle that is his life. Loved it. It's beautifully written. I have a feeling we will see this book award season. It is that good. So that's Martyr by Kaveh Akbar, and this is out from Knopf. Okay, top 2 books. Coming in at number 2 is James by Percival Everett, out from Doubleday. I don't think I need to say too much about James other than the fact that, y'all, if you haven't read James by Percival Everett, stop what you're doing, go out and buy it and read it. It is just amazing. It's a retelling of the Huckleberry Finn story from the point of view of James. The sort of dark humor of what Percival Everett does with the character of James flushes him out, makes him even like so three-dimensional, and does such an amazing job of building a backstory that just makes sense to what we all know as the Huck Finn story. James becomes a man trying to save his family, a man trying to make decisions that are for the right of many versus the right of one. We get to see where he goes when he left Huck in the Huck Finn story, but we also get to see him sort of deal with not only the world as it is, but the world that he and other Black people see it as, if that makes sense. It's so dynamic. It does take a minute to get into, so I want you to sort of give yourself a little bit of grace in the beginning, but once it starts going, you will not stop turning the page. It's like next level brilliant. I cannot see this not winning the Pulitzer. I cannot see this not on the National Book Award list. Y'all, James by Percival Everett is next level brilliant. Please get it. Thank you, Doubleday. You sent me an early copy. I went out and bought my copy because it's amazing, and I loved it. So last but not least, these top 10 videos are always a little bit long because it's really those of us gushing about the books that we love, right? And I want to say that I love this book. James and this book really have fluctuated between my top 2 favorite reads of the year. But this was a book that I didn't know I would love as much as I did until I started it. And that's Real Americans by Rachel Khong. This is also out from Knopf. And Rachel wrote Goodbye Vitamin, which I adored. I actually met her at a library event for that book, and she was amazing. And this is her sophomore novel. This is a family story, which I thought when I went into it, I understood what she was going to do, and I did not. I did not. She threw me for a loop. So the book starts from the point of view of the mother, who is Lily. She lives in New York. She's just graduating college. She's an intern, and she meets a man who sweeps her off her feet and sort of brings her from a level of middle classdom to a level of wealth that she doesn't know what to do with. We find out a lot about the relationship she has with her mother and father, who are scientists, who have really just led a life of strict rules, strict expectations, and Lily is striving for that. The book then goes into a section, moves to Washington, where we meet Lily's son. And he doesn't know much about his father. He's a teenager. He's also about to graduate from high school. And he doesn't know. He's been sort of told that his father wants nothing to do with him. His best friend convinces him to search for his father, and everything changes for him. Once he finds out who his father is. And again, Money changes everything. The last section of this book is told from the point of view of Lily's mother. We go back in a story that she's telling her grandson, to her life in China, to the Chinese Revolution, and how that dynamic and how she got to America and who she is as a person. And everything we've known about Lily's mom throughout the rest of the book is told, sort of put in a completely different perspective. The book comes down to really a story of moms and what moms are willing to do for their children and protect their children from. Do they all make great choices? No. Sometimes very, very not great choices. But there's such love for family in this book. And it's also this idea of money and the corruption of money and how sometimes people's humanity is lost because of money. Real Americans by Rachel Khong is an amazing book that I want more and more people to read. It's a beautiful, beautiful story of love and friendship and family. And it's just different. It just did something different that I didn't expect. So I loved it. And that's why it's my #1 read of 2024 so far. Well, I hope that you all enjoyed this video. I know it's long. It's always long when it's a top 10 video, but I wanted to let you know that all of these books really have affected my reading year, and I hope you'll pick up a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. As always, if you're a return subscriber, I could not do this without you. If you are new to my channel, I hope you hit that subscribe button and click all the little bells and whistles so that that helps my channel out. As always, I encourage you to read globally, shop locally, and until next time, I wish you happy reading. Bye, everyone.